This is the Mazda CX-8, and it's one of the bigger SUVs that Mazda makes. The CX-9 sits above it, being slightly larger, but this is pretty much as big as it gets at Mazda. And I got this because I wanted to see, of course, why it's so popular, because there's a lot of these out on the road, and to see if it can dethrone the Kia Sorento in being called one of the best seven-seaters you can buy for under $100,000. And so to do that and see if it is better than the Kia, I'm gonna walk you around the exterior features, the interior features, take it for a drive to let you know if you should buy one of these over a Kia Sorento. My name's Cameron, let's get into it. Now the CX-8 range starts off from around the mid 40,000s, which is a pretty good entry price, but depending on how luxurious you want your CX-8 to feel, you'll be spending upwards of nearly $76,000 for the top of the range model of this car. This exact car we have here is around $74,000, and it's just because it has the 7-seat option instead of the more luxurious 6-seat option. And this one is called the Asahi trim and not the Asahi trim, and so this one is going to give you pretty much every single option you need in your car. So it's right in ballpark with the Kia Sorento GT line. So starting off with the outside features, well, talking about the design, this thing is far less boxy than the Kia Sorento. It's more flowy, it's a bit more elegant in that regard, so some people might prefer the design of this than the traditional boxy SUV looks of the Kia Sorento. Now down towards the front, we have a very distinct Mazda grille. I really like Mazda's grilles, to be honest. They look quite good, especially this one here, and I do like the use of chrome throughout the front, like a bit like it's wearing a mustache. You've also got LED headlamps and LED daytime running lights. They're very bright, and I really like how this car looks from the front, although if you're looking for something that's very distinct, this one sort of looks very similar to the other Mazda SUVs that you'll see running out on the road just from a front glance. But what I do love down the front is that Mazda's integrated their radar systems right here in the badge, because it's a glass badge, and that looks far more elegant than when companies, even like BMW, put giant square radars slapped into the grille. Now along the side of the more expensive CX-8 Asahi model, you've got 19-inch alloy wheels, and they're wrapped in a Toyo rubber. What I do like is the design. This thing looks really quite nice. I do like how there's some clean lines here. The use of chrome is pretty nice as well. It's not all that gaudy, and I do like the fact that the doors are quite large. Now look, the passenger has plenty of space to get in, no problem. But what I do like is on the second row, you have these doors which open to pretty much 90 degrees with the car. And I love this packaging Mazda does with the SUVs. So it makes it far more easy to get in and out and put child seats or anyone else in this car. And then of course you have your roof rails up top, which are very practical and I do think completes the look of this car. And now finishing up the design at the back, this is a very clean looking car, although I wish this stuck-on wiper was tucked under the spoiler here like it is on the Sorento. But apart from that, you got some pretty normal taillights here at the rear, some more chrome, but I do like the real exhaust pipes underneath, which just really complete the look of this SUV. Now the CX-8 is a wildly practical car, and if you want to open this tailgate, you can do it either by pressing a button on the back, on the key, or on the inside. And yes, it's an automatic tailgate and it's height adjustable. Now you have a nice flat load floor which goes all the way through, and you can see here with all the seats up, you still have a lot of space. And it's because there's these nice thoughtful cutouts on either side, so you could put a golf bag or two in the back with 7 people riding in this car. And then you could even put more stuff below the boot floor, which has a carpeted little false floor, and you can just put smaller items in there to hide them from plain sight, or just to give yourself some more storage. And then below that, we do have a spare tire and everything you need to change one. Now to fold this third row down, you just pull these levers, and they're very easy to do one-handed, and you can just go ahead and push that, and away they go. And that gives you even more space, and this car is nice and boxy, even though it looks quite swoopy on the outside. And there's a 12-volt plug in the rear here. There's also some hooks and even some bag hooks in the back, so your shopping doesn't go flying around, which is quite useful. Now, if you want to fold this second row, you open this door here, you pull a lever, and they will fold flat. But there is a bit of a canyon between the third row and the second row, so it becomes a bit annoying. And these are quite tall, so the second row feels like your luggage is going to be closer to the ceiling than it is in the back. But all in all, this is going to be a perfect family car to take away for a long holiday when you need to carry a whole bunch of stuff. Now look, I was deeply impressed with the Kia Sorento's interior, but the Mazda tickles my brain in a different way. It feels far more luxurious in here. And that's because there's been a thoughtful use of stitching, materials, and of course, the leather application in here. This is a awesome car to spend a lot of time in, and it will really make your decision-making process a lot harder once you step into something as nice as this compared to the Kia Sorento. Now, first of all, ergonomics, you have a nice deep floor for the front passenger and driver, so it feels like you're sitting more upright and you have plenty of space for your feet, and I just love sitting in this thing. I spent a lot of time reviewing a motorbike the other day, and when I hopped into this, I just felt like I was on a sanctuary on wheels. It was so nice having so much vertical space, and I just felt like I was in a perfect seating position. These brown leather seats look great. They have like a quilted stitching pattern to them as well, and they just really do a good job of looking the part for a car like this. And I also do like the brown leather accenting here on the doors. We do have Bose speakers splashed around in here, and they sound excellent, so your audio is going to sound nice and crisp and really feel the cabin here. And it does do a better job of filling this cabin than the Kia Sorento system. Now, these seats are electronically adjustable, so it's really easy to get comfortable, and this steering wheel here is telescopic. Now, in terms of what's going on the dashboard, we do have 3 screens. We have a driver's display, we also have a heads-up display, and we have a 10.25-inch screen here in the middle. Although what's really annoying is that the 10.25-inch screen is not touch. So if you just want to quickly touch something, it's right there. You have to go through the rotary knob in the middle, which is very typical of Mazda, but you know, it can be a little bit annoying, especially when you're used to cars that have it like the Kia Sorento. And I'm unsure as to why Mazda kept the analog dials on either side of this digital screen. I'm not complaining, but I just think it's an interesting thing to keep, especially when you use a giant screen in the middle, but it makes it easy to read at a glance. But what there isn't a lack of is a lack of hard buttons. They're everywhere. They're here on the doors, near your knee, and plenty for the climate controls. But there's no drive modes, which I find quite interesting. And I really like that philosophy that, you know, you have the one mode and that's it, and it drives really well. This is just meant to be a family car. It's not meant to be pretending to be a sports car or anything like that. And I do like that quite a lot. So, but just to know, there is no drive modes like there are on the Kia Sorento. And I do also like the hard buttons for the climate controls, but what I like even more than those are the dials to adjust the temperature. Just like, oh, just such a crisp click. It sounds so good. And I wish every dial with these 2 dials to adjust your temperature. We do have a push button start, and we do have a pretty traditional looking shifter, nothing too crazy. But what I do like is that the manual shifting here is sequential. So Mazda's done a proper job of making sure that when you want to shift down, you push up, and when you want to shift up, you pull down. Or you can use these paddles, but I don't really see the point in having these. I will say the one annoying material in here is the gloss black plastic, because in the center here, even when I got it, it was already scratched to bits, and it just looks hideous compared to all the nice materials that are used in here. So I wish that was supplemented maybe for this metal look material that we see throughout the cabin. Now, second row seats are very comfortable here too. You have a nice upright sitting position. You see over the driver and passenger, which is quite good. You have your own climate controls in the back, and the outer 2 seats are heated, which is very luxurious. I do like these dual map pockets, which makes it easier for kids or passengers in the back to organize their things. You do have easy to access ISOFIX points. You have a giant blind here on the rear window, even more luxurious materials. It's not any less luxurious in the back than it is up front. And we have a nice big center armrest with plenty of storage and two USB ports in the middle. This is a great place to spend a lot of time, and people who are going to go away on a trip can also make use of these seats, which recline a little bit, and you can just sort of make yourself at home. And as someone who's 5'11", I'm having a great time back here, and I have plenty of headroom, plenty of knee room, plenty of feet room, but the Kia Sorento does feel more spacious in the second row. And also the Kia Sorento will allow the rear left passenger to also adjust the seat in front of them to give them more room if no one's sitting there. So I just like that thoughtfulness there, and this car doesn't have that. So if you're comparing apples to apples, that's the difference there. Now, the middle seat is a little bit more harsh compared to the Sorento as well, because it does have a giant transmission and exhaust tunnel, which means that it's, you know, fine for me to put my feet on there, but my knees then feel very close to my chin. And then if I want to put my feet on either side, then I'm impeding on my fellow passengers' foot space. So that's just the small complaint there. And also this has quite a round middle seat, so it feels like I'm sitting on a jump seat or a booster seat, even though the outer seats are very comfortable. So yeah, second row space is great for 4 people, but becomes a bit tight with 5. And then I would think that's where the Kia Sorento does a better job. Now, strangely, the CX-8 comes with a button and a couple of levers. So for some, it might be confusing how you get in the back. You can press the button here, which says it will move the seat forward. It makes a beep. When you release it, the seat will fold forward and you just push it forwards, which is all right. But yeah, it's kind of hard for children to be able to do that on their own. And I just think it's not as easy to just do that quickly like it is on the Sorento. But once you're all in, there's no problem. And then adjusting the seat back, there are some rails which sort of feel like they get in the way of your feet if you have bigger feet. And then once the seat in front of you is all put together, you've got your seat in the back. And look, these seats in the back are far more comfortable than the Kia Sorentos. They're very spongy, very well put together. I like the packaging here. It's got a nice flat floor. Yes, it's traditional 7-seat seating where my knees feel a lot higher than they would be in the second row, but I feel like I'm quite comfortable. And these armrests could be padded, but they are hard plastic, so that's where your cup holders go. And we have a USB port on either side. So look, I'm not complaining, but then my window in the back is small-ish, but I still can see out and get a fair amount of light. So overall, I think the CX-8 has a better third row seat than the Sorento, and it's just so comfortable for adults as well that, you know, you wouldn't really have any complaints for shorter trips. Sure, this car is practical and pretty much neck and neck with the Sorento, so I want to see how it drives to see if it drives better than that Korean 7-seater. Now, truthfully, there isn't a whole bunch to the Mazda CX-8's driving experience. This is a basic family SUV, but what I really appreciate is the fact that Mazda have done a great job of tuning this car to be a very easy car to drive. You just jump in, start the car, and start driving. There's no drive modes to adjust. There's nothing really to go beyond adjusting for your seating position. Now, under the bonnet, we have a 2.2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel unit producing 140 kilowatts and 450 newton meters of torque. Now, look, that translates into 0 to 100 time of close to 10 seconds, so this isn't a quick car by any means, but this model here is fitted with an all-wheel drive system, so it does feel like you've got a bit more grip going through tighter corners as we're about to experience. Now, look, that diesel is a bit noisy under the bonnet, even though there's plenty of sound isolation here. Once you're up and running, it's pretty barely noticeable, but once you're cruising around here, it's just, you know, slightly trucky, if that makes sense. So you're basically feeling like you're driving a bit of a tractor, like any sort of traditional diesel. This one isn't any different. But yes, that all-wheel drive system really does feed the power down nicely, and I feel like when you go through tighter corners and put the power on, you really feel like you've got grip. And especially in these couple of past days which have had a lot of rain, this car really has felt solid through super wet roads and even some deeper puddles which have appeared on the road. So I've really appreciated having all-wheel drive in this bigger car. And it also would be a good option if you're going away to places like the snow, or you find yourself jumping onto gravel roads quite often on your family trips, or taking an SUV away. I think that's quite useful. So yes, all-wheel drive seems like it would be worthwhile in this larger SUV. Now, this diesel power plant is quite interesting. It's got a lot of torque compared to the petrol version of this car, and I do like how it sort of feeds on. You get nice and healthy amount of power, but yes, it comes with quite a lot of noise, and you do get a little bit of turbo noise under there, so that's quite fun. But yes, overall, this is a very good power plant to use if you want to go on longer trips, because it's quite fuel efficient, and it's a bit more fuel efficient than the petrol. Now, steering is a bit vague, unfortunately, so that means that you're not really going to get a super sporty steering feel, and you can't adjust that. So that's just something you're going to have to live with. But once you're used to it, you'll get used to this thing having a pretty quick steering ratio. But I do find that my steering wheels turn quite a lot to 90 degrees just to get some simple turns done, and you almost cross your hands over something like this, but then you're fine as you exit on the way out. Now check it out, as we go through these gears here, this is a pretty slick gearbox. Yes, shifts are noticeable thanks to the change in the sound of the engine, but you don't feel them. I really like how smooth this car operates. It's just something you can cruise around in, and I honestly have not been in a more comfortable larger SUV below $100,000. The Kia Sorento is really quite good, but there are just some small things there that just make it not as comfortable as this. So one, the ergonomics. This thing does a really good job of allowing you to sit upright, but also sink back into your chair. And I also like just how close I am to the steering wheel without feeling like my chest is right up near the airbag. I also like how the gearbox operates with this engine, although I would like this diesel to be slightly more quiet. So I've been thoroughly looking forward to driving possibly a future hybrid model of this, or if this CX-8 ever went electric, that would be quite cool too, because I think this would all go very nicely with a quieter powertrain. But the power that the diesel delivers is quite nice, and also feels quite reassuring in the mid-range, so it feels like you could load this car up no problems and go away without feeling like you're going to struggle driving up long hills. Now, I have no reason why I would be using these paddles to change gears when I could just use the shifter, which is in a sequential pattern, so that's not a problem. So I just think these paddles just feel slightly unnecessary, but they're there if you really want them. Now let's talk about the wheels, tires, and suspension. suspension tuned. Let's talk about the suspension first and the chassis. It's great. It does a really good job of feeling like a cohesive driving experience. And I feel like this has a bit of influence from something like the Mazda MX-5, which I stepped out just before getting into this. So it's quite a departure from that lightweight sports car. But what I can feel is that the steering feel, the suspension feel, all that stuff feels like, you know, they're going for a car that drives well, but it doesn't sacrifice comfort. Now these larger 19-inch wheels, yes, they feel like they do introduce a bit more road feel into the cabin, which can be quite annoying, but avoiding potholes like that, steering feel is great as well, and the suspension works brilliantly all together, and that's what I mean by a cohesive driving experience, that when you go to quickly dart against something, this car does it like that, and without having to change into different drive modes. I really appreciate that. So I think the driving experience here is better than the Kia Sorento, just because it just feels like a more driver-focused car. And these Toyo tires are actually pretty good. They provide plenty of grip. They're nice and quiet. You do hear a bit of road noise coming through, but once you put music on, or you're talking to someone, it really becomes background sound, so it's not all that bad. And then in terms of our safety features here, we do have radar cruise control, we have speed limiters, and we do have active lane keep assist and all that sort of stuff. But I do like the active lane keep assist in the Sorento a bit more, because it's a dedicated button there on the steering wheel which you can turn on and off, and it just allows you to sort of navigate a little bit more confidently without having to sort of keep your hands more firmly planted on the wheel, because it feels a bit more active when it's steering compared to this, which only really activates when you're closer towards a line, which isn't really confidence inspiring. And finally, the brakes. The brakes are really interesting in this car because they're not super strong when they bite, but what was very apparent when I had passengers and I had to come to some abrupt stops, it was a stillness that came into the cabin rather than your whole head being thrown forward when you slammed on the brakes. So if I go, say, pretend a obstacle's just dropped out in front of me, now look, braking, yes, of course, things go flying, but the car just sort of seems to glide to a stop. It doesn't lurch forward. So that is one of the most impressive things I've found in this car, is its braking. And honestly, that might be the thing that makes this thing the most pleasant to drive around, is that your head's not lurching around. That brake feel is nice and soft. It's not abrupt, so you can sort of modulate it really nice, and you don't have to worry about disturbing everyone if you have to brake a bit harder. And so look, overall, you're gonna have a brilliant time driving this car, and you're really gonna feel relaxed. I think this car really does an awesome job of making sure that the driver who's going to be doing, you know, all the school runs and drop-offs and pickups and going on long trips and all that sort of stuff is looked after very well. Now, I have a slight problem. The Kia Sorento and the Mazda CX-8 for me are so closely tied in terms of being the ultimate 7-seaters for under $100,000. On the one hand, the Mazda CX-8 does a really good job of its attention to detail, its drive, and also its overall packaging and luxury feel for something that really feels more expensive than it actually is. But then the Sorento does a better job with its technology and its day-to-day ability to live with it, just because it's got slightly better passenger packaging in the second row. And so when push comes to shove, I will still say that the Kia Sorento would be the slightly better pick than the Mazda CX-8, but that's not completely discounting this. If you don't like the Kia Sorento for whatever reason, then the Mazda CX-8 should be your close second option. I really think this is a brilliant 7-seater, really easy to live with. I would almost consider buying one myself if I needed to get one for a family. I just love it that much, and I can completely understand why it's so popular. But yeah, Kia just has the slight upper hand. So if Mazda could come in with a bit more tech and maybe a slightly better second row packaging, like flattening out that rear floor, then it would almost take the cake here. Now, thank you so much for watching. My name's Cameron. This is Product Review Cars, and if you want to see more 7-seater SUV reviews just like this one, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.